Okay, it is 12:03, so we're going to get started. Thank you all so much for being here for our next edition of our applicant webinar. We hope that these have been informative for you. We've done a couple now so far this cycle. And we have a couple more coming up. So again, we hope that this provides you some additional information as you work on your application. My name is Caroline Allen, and I am the Vice President of the YAS Prize. I am thrilled to be here with my colleague Josephina and two of our alumni who you will hear from soon. Today's webinar is really focused on the T principle, which is for transformation. 2 weeks ago, we met and talked about sustainability and the importance of sustainability for our education organizations. And if you missed that webinar, please feel free to go on our YAS Prize YouTube page, and that recording is there. But today is all about transformation, and I'm really excited to dive into this principle next. So today we're going to be talking about a couple things. One, I'm going to be diving into what this transformational principle looks like, building off of some past alumni examples. Then we'll hear from two of our awardees, Dr. Corey Steiner and Brian Curcio, and then we will be answering questions from the audience at the end. You'll notice that there's the chat feature and the Q&A feature. For the questions from you all, please use the Q&A feature. And if you have questions that come up as I'm talking, feel free to put them in there. Josephina might answer some during this webinar, but we'll also answer a bunch at the end. So feel free to put them in the Q&A portion, not the chat. So this is really how we define, sorry, 1 second. Josephina, can you tell Jeannie that I'm not available right now? I'm sorry about that. Okay. We'll just ignore that little music for right now. So transformational, what does it take to truly transform learning for students? We know that there's a wealth of new approaches, tools, and understandings about what works. Since our current education system was created, we want to make sure our education system is focusing on serving students in highly individualized, responsive, and personalized ways. Schools and providers are transformational when they utilize these approaches to modify the learning environment in order to make sure that the learning is rigorous, is personalized, and is truly different than when our parents went to school or when we went to school. Like, there's no reason that it should still be the same type of education. When you think about a classic education, system, students are facing front in desks, often silent, listening to a teacher for 7 hours a day, focusing on the traditional subjects of reading and math. And it's not to say that those subjects are not important, they are, but we know based on our alumni and based on research that there are so many more responsive and more successful ways to educate our students. One size does not fit all. And we're really thrilled to share some examples from our alumni of ways that they have been transformational and continue to be, and to be shining pillars of what this principle looks like in action. So I'm about to go through, I have 6 examples of our alumni and how they are truly being a beacon of hope and inspiration related to transformation. So first, we have Chickasaw City Schools in Alabama. They are a public school district, and they know that the trades are in high demand. I know, like, speaking from my own experience, our plumbers, our electricians, like, those trades are so important. And unfortunately, less and less kids are seeking those out as career options. So what Chickasaw City Schools does is, particularly with their high school students, they are refurbishing shipping containers and making them into solar powered computer labs. And they're also using 3D printers to create prosthetic legs that then, and those prosthetic legs get shipped and they go on service learning trips with their kids to Latin America to give those legs to people in need. And, this level of, taking this project-based learning is something that, sets them apart from many other traditional school districts. They also are super collaborative, meaning that a lot of our awardees are going to see them in action in Alabama, learning from them, and then taking what they're doing and taking it back to their own schools or their own, students. So Oakmont Education, I don't know if you all were on last time's webinar, but Chris Galassi-Whirl, of the Vice President of Oakmont Education, is bringing students to Alabama. They're learning of how they're using these 3D printers to make these prosthetics legs. Then they're getting a 3D printer themselves, and they're doing this in Oakmont in Ohio. And then they're combining forces and doing a combined trip to Latin America to deliver the legs that they've collectively built. So again, this school is still teaching reading and writing and math, but they're also providing their students with this transformative experience that I know will be a lasting. They might not remember what they learned in algebra class, but they will remember going to Latin America and doing this amazing, incredible service work. The second example, totally different, is Italy. Italy is an ed tech platform that is nationwide, so they're not in one specific state. They're a TikTok-like platform, which pushes teachers to rethink how they're teaching. Teachers and students co-create content for free, and they put it on their platform. And it's, different domains and different content and different grades, but all on their Italy platform. We get a lot of ed tech applications. And the reason that Italy was different is because there's a demand for this type of innovative learning that blends technology. It's not just putting students on a computer and having them passively learn chemistry, but instead they're co-creating content with their teachers. And we all know that when students are engaged in their learning, there's a higher level of buy-in, and therefore there's a higher level of retention of those skills or concepts or learning. So Italy, we don't fund a ton of ed tech. A lot of our organizations are direct education providers, but when we see an organization like Italy, or you'll hear from Rapunzel soon, when we see them that are doing something completely different, that's when we really get excited. Next up, we have Launch Expeditionary Learning Charter School in Brooklyn. They are an outward bound school, and they they've acquired 1,000 acres of land in Brooklyn. And you might think, like, how is there that much unused land in Brooklyn? But there is. And they are really using this opportunity to build a coalition of businesses and civic organizations to co-create solutions related to sustainability and equity. They are also adding a marine biology career pathway that's linked to academic coursework in order to, have students not only understand the other academic pathways that are available to them, but explore those like through internships in high school. And so, they have a huge project underway. Obviously, acquiring 1,000 acres of land is a heroic effort, but they are doing so in a really transformative way, collectively working with those coalitions of businesses and civic organizations. So excited that they are one of our awardees and doing something transformational in the city of New York. Black Mothers Forum was actually one of our first awardees that Jeff and Janine Yas granted, before we even started the Yas Prize. So they're our OG, but they are someone who we also funded last year. They are a micro school network in Phoenix and really throughout Arizona. And they're a first of a kind program, really thinking about leveraging and giving resources to urban African American moms during COVID in order to support when they were supporting their kids with learning. And they have built these small group learning centers, which are financially stable on public dollars and really provide this individualized learning approach when a family or a parent realizes that maybe their public school that their kid has been attending is not working for them. And we believe they're transformational because of that individualized support, because the fact that they are seeing parents as experts and as choice makers and decision makers and so knowledgeable about what their kids need, and then leveraging that through giving them resources and a space so that they can have that more small, that smaller learning environment for their kids. Next up, a little bit similar is KaiPod Learning. They're out of Massachusetts, but they're also growing nationally. They have 12 in-person learning pods across 4 states, and they really develop small learning communities. What's transformational about them, and they're led by Amar Kumar, which is he's right here in the middle, is they are creating a catalyst, a KaiPod catalyst program, and they're looking for the next level of leaders who are wanting to build their own KaiPod learning center in their town or community. And so he's not only thinking about building these themselves, but he's also building a movement of other leaders who want to provide this option in their community. And last up, we have Build Up. Build Up is a workforce high school in Birmingham, Alabama. They focus on career awareness, exploration, and really experiential opportunities. They know that there are houses in Alabama that need to be renovated, and they are also working on, they know that Birmingham is a place where there's a lot of revitalization. So students attend their school, they earn financial capital through stipends, and then they are set up through the program and through the years that they're with them to earn middle class wages and then become homeowners themselves. So this is where we really see like learning transcending from like math and reading, right? Like these students are obviously graduating from high school, so they have those skills of, you know, strong math skills, strong reading skills, strong writing skills. But just as importantly, they're learning how to become financially stable for themselves and their families. They're learning that what it takes to become homeowners and then be able to have equity. And we know how powerful that can be. And so they're learning both those hard skills and those soft skills, and really thinking about students holistically and not just as like passive receptors of like learning. They're really, you know, on the job site doing projects in person, which to me is, you know, also a shining light for transformation. So as you notice with these 6 examples, and then we also have, you know, Dr. Corey Steiner with us and Brian Curcio, you'll hear from them soon. But as you can see, these 6 examples are really, really different. Like we can't really compare KaiPod to Launch Charter School, to Build Up, to what, you know, Dr. Steiner is doing at Northern Cass in his school district. But they all are doing something different. And they're all doing something that's pushing the needle so that kids are not just doing the same type of learning that they've always been doing. And therefore, we see, you know, better results. And so next time's webinar is going to focus on outstanding. And so transformation and outstanding really do connect with each other, because the type of education that you're providing then leads to what metrics are most important for you to share. So what are those metrics that are truly important to you? Maybe it's graduation rate. Maybe it's your social emotional, you know, learning, you know, a survey that you do to track that learning. Maybe it's something related to SPED or ELL or parent engagement. We're not going to specify what metric you use, but based on how you're transformative, that also then links to how you're proving that you're outstanding. A few quick housekeeping items before we get to our wonderful alumni. These are our key application dates for 2023. Right now, we're between these 2 dates with our YAS Prize application deadline coming up July 15th. We will then announce our 64 quarterfinalists in September, which we're really excited about. Then we will break the group in half. All quarterfinalists, all 64, will be invited to Cleveland for our YAS Prize Summit. But at that point in Cleveland, we will be breaking the group in half to identify our 32 semifinalists, which will each receive up to $250,000. Then those 32 will come with us to Miami for the YAS Prize Accelerator. We will have a whole separate webinar on the accelerator, which is one of our pride points as an organization. And then finally, we will reveal our finalists and our $1 million winner live from New York City in December to close out our year. So obviously the application deadline is still a little bit ways away. But we encourage you to, use these webinars in order to make your application even stronger and not submit at the last minute. So. Okay, it is now my honor to introduce Dr. Corey Steiner and Brian Curcio. Dr. Steiner is the superintendent of Northern Cass Public School District in Hunter, North Dakota. And I'm excited for him to share a little bit more. And then we have Brian Curcio from Rapunzel, which is a financial literacy ed tech company. So I am going to stop sharing, and they are here. Thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Dr. Steiner. Can you tell us who you are, where you live, and a little bit about Northern Cass?
Yeah, as Carolyn said, I'm Corey Steiner. I'm the superintendent for the Northern Cass School District. We're located about 30 miles northwest of Fargo. If you could look out my window, you would see we are a school that is literally surrounded by cornfields. We're about 10 miles from any of the 6 exceptionally small communities we serve. 5 years ago, we committed to becoming a personalized competency-based learning district, which eliminated letter grades and percentage grades, which allows the articulation of credit for anything a kid does, both inside and outside our walls, and moved to the idea that learners being choice ready is the most important metric we can measure. And ultimately, them being good human beings is going to be the standard we're going to set for success in our district.
And there's so many more questions I have for you related to, getting rid of letter grades. So we'll get there in a minute. But before I do, Brian Curcio from Rapunzel, can you share with us where you're from, what you do at Rapunzel?
Yeah, so I'm Brian Curcio, one of the founders of Rapunzel, which is a gamified financial literacy platform for middle and high school students. We started the company based in Chicago, did our first citywide competition with students there, and have since grown to have a national offering with most of our students from kind of the Midwest, Texas, and then now there's a lot more in Florida and New York joining.
Awesome. So, Dr. Steiner, you mentioned, that you get rid of letter grades and that you're really focusing on students and putting students first and really displaying in other ways how they're successful and how they're showing their learning. Why is it important that we, instruct kids in a different way? And why should that evolve?
It's a great question, Caroline, and I think there's a few different things I would mention to say why the old system is antiquated and absolutely needs to be discarded immediately. One is, look at the world around us. The change is exponential. We're doubling the amount of information we have in minutes, it seems like. And with that exponential change, we can't create a learner that can regurgitate knowledge. We have to create learners that can apply knowledge in real time and be given opportunities to solve problems that are out in their community. I think when we know better, we should do better. We know that no 2 learners are alike, yet we're still using a system that says everybody needs to fit into this small little box. We can't do that. And then ultimately, the last reason is, don't our kids deserve it? If we have a vision for a more gentle and accepting society, for a society that believes everybody brings value, don't our kids deserve to have a different type of education? Even if it worked for me and even if it worked for you, don't they deserve more than that?
Right. And it's really leveraging. We can't predict what jobs are going to be available or what jobs are not going to be available in 10 years. But what we can predict is that it's really important that all kids are adaptive, like solving real world problems, sophisticated with their writing, understanding technology. Like, we know that those are not going to go away. So I think, leveraging that is really important. Brian, where, financial literacy is something that a lot of states are adopting. So like, where did this idea of Rapunzel come from, and how are you evolving the ways that kids are learning about like math in a different way?
Yeah, so I've always been really interested in finance and investing. I met my co-founder actually freshman year of high school. We were 3 or 4 lockers apart, and we were 2 of the only kids in our class that talked about finance and investing. It was not covered in school at all. And so we stayed in touch through college, and kind of by senior year, we had a lot of friends going into financial services or kind of pursuing being a doctor, any career path, and trying to figure out what they do now that they're starting to get a paycheck. and really being lost. And so both Miles and I realized there was this huge knowledge gap. And I think kind of to the point that we don't know the jobs of the future, but it's pretty sure that you're going to be paying income taxes on your first paycheck. And so it's like maybe understanding how to pay taxes would be useful, and kind of this idea that we tell kids money makes the world go round. So it's probably a good idea to teach the kids about money at some point.
Right. And we do get a lot of applications, related to ed tech or related to curriculum. And what made Rapunzel different was, again, we know that financial literacy is important, but a lot of teachers or a lot of schools might not be nimble enough to offer it. And so Rapunzel then partners with those schools or organizations in order to provide that, those types of opportunities for their students. And so it's not just like your next level literacy curriculum, which everyone is like, oh, I have the best new latest literacy curriculum that's going to solve illiteracy in our country. And that's awesome. That's great. But a lot of people are doing that, right? A lot of people are doing that, and Rapunzel is doing something that's much different, and equally as innovative. So that's why we chose them over the lots of applications related to ed tech. Dr. Sonia, I want to dig a little bit more into like, how does this all work? Like, how did you go from, you're a traditional school district, and I know that we have people on this call who are potential applicants thinking about how they fit in. Do I fit into the YAS prize? Am I eligible as a traditional school district when I might not be like fully permissionless? But how does it work to like abolish letter grades? Like, where did that come from, and what was that process like?
It was a tough process, and I've told people I don't know that I've ever had a more difficult lift in my entire career, or probably been as disliked as I was at any point in my career. But ultimately, what we really did with our families is we sat down and we had the conversation about what do they want for their child, and nobody ever said like, well, I want them to be a 3.72 GPA and I want them to get into this college. All of them said they want them to be like great human beings who are happy and successful. And we had to admit we couldn't do that in the traditional system. And so we said, what if we could make what happens here about learning and about joy and about engagement? And if we did that, what if we could assess that or report that out differently than a traditional grade? Because we all know a 70% in my school to a 70% 30 miles down the road, they do not mean the same thing. We're lying if we say they do. And for us, so it was really about getting our community to understand is we're going to tell you exactly what your kid does, what they do and do not know, but we're also going to give them different opportunities and experiences to show us that they know that. Experiences that matter to them instead of experiences that just matter to the adults.
And when you talk about that pushback, like where was that pushback coming from? Because it probably wasn't coming maybe fully from parents. Like, was it coming from teachers? Like, what's the governance of your school district?
Yeah, I mean, pushback certainly from some parents. They're really worried that their kids wouldn't get into college. That was just a non-factor. We had some pushback from colleges. We met with them and we explained like how this could benefit them. Honestly, a lot of the pushback came from kids because they had known nothing different than percentage and letter grades. And that's how they were assessed, right? That was their worth. Well, I'm an A student and I'm in the paper for the honor roll. And we had to tell them that, no, you bring so much more value than just what's on a report card. And so we just had to have those conversations around, we're just going to report out that you've had this wealth of beautiful experiences to become a human being that you are. And actually what we told them is you get to write your story, and you get to write your story with the failures being part of growth instead of being the end of something.
And before I head back to Brian, now looking back, now that you've made this change and you are like full-fledged a school district that embraces, this different way of grading and evaluating and assessing, how are students thinking about this now? How is that changing their mindset about what they're capable of and how they show progress?
Yeah, it's probably the thing I think I'm most proud about is like when people come to visit our school and we say we're brave, we're not perfect. We're just going to be brave. In the panels that our kids do, and we don't coach them on it, they will say what we do in class is about learning. What we do in class is about giving us choice. Like we have the ability to build our agency to choose what the path forward looks like for us. And when that path doesn't work for us, we have a choice to be able to flex into a different path. And our kids talk about learning. They don't talk about grades. It's like the most beautiful thing that ever happens in an organization. And once that happens, and once kids realize that GPA and some of those other things that used to be success metrics aren't what really matters, it allows your system to just fully transform itself.
And we know, like last point here, we know we're in a mental health crisis, especially with our teens and young adults. And I can only imagine, even though it's harder to probably quantitatively measure, but I can only imagine probably the reduced pressure or the reduced the impact of people's mental health in a positive way with this, right? Like that's not maybe the first reason why you did it, but it's a true impact of, taking a little bit of that pressure and refocusing on like what's most important, which are those skills and really showing progress.
Probably the best unintended consequence of all this work has just been that. That's
right.
a great one.
So Brian, what inspired you to provide this, other option? And what does it look like when you partner with a school?
I think that, it was kind of realizing just the need. There was this huge rise of Robinhood, my senior year of college. And I think just that massive adoption of being able to immediately start investing with your smartphone with zero education or information around it. It was my partner and I, it was like, they're just repeating credit cards all over again. And it's like selling these financial products without any real understanding of how it works. It's like the banks aren't doing it because they're thinking that we need to create equitable access to financial markets. They're doing it to make money. And so it was really trying to figure out, like, how can we have a more educational on-ramp from someone who says, I want to take charge of my finances, all the way through to you're taking charge and not getting sucked into a lot of the predatory opportunities that are out there. And so it began first by just creating a real-time simulator for students to learn to invest in a risk-free way. And we quickly realized that teachers didn't necessarily feel comfortable bringing investing to their students. We have this strange chicken and egg right now where we didn't teach financial literacy in the past, but now that it's become a requirement, we're somehow assuming that we know how to teach it. And so a lot of what Miles and I have done, first it started with us going into the classrooms and carrying the weight and teaching. And then that was where the curriculum actually was kind of developed organically as needed when we were going into different classrooms. And so now we have a full comprehensive semester-long financial literacy curriculum. Thanks to kind of the YAS Prize and our grant in December, we've been able to build an educator portal so that educators can access the full curriculum, and it's integrated kind of all of the assessments within the students' actual trading profiles. So it's trying to just give the teachers the insights that we had when we were teaching in the class, and kind of showing this student hasn't checked their portfolio in 3 weeks, like it's worth talking to them. So trying to just bring that transparency, I think, a lot of the times.
And part of the YAS Prize, network is meeting people like Brian and Dr. Steiner, right? Like when they were at the accelerator in Miami, because of that and because learning from, what Rapunzel has to offer, Brian, how many awardees are you collaborating with, or how many of our awardees are using your curriculum and your platform?
It's like over 20 different schools have either signed up or with plans to kind of start it in the fall. And I think that was the biggest takeaway we had is from the ed tech perspective was even when we went to New York as a quarterfinalist, I remember going through the room and it was like, I was texting my partner, I'm like, signed up another school, signed up. I was like the community that you get. And instead of like, I don't know, it just felt like sometimes it was like pulling teeth, but then inside that YAS community, it was just like everyone you speak to, it's like, wait, you have financial literacy. Oh, we have a teacher that's taught that before. So it's like, there's a lot of sharing of information too, which is helpful. It's not like the ed tech stands in one corner and sells the Corey Steiners of the world. And then we go home from Miami. I think it was really like, we're all learning together. And I don't think, speaking from my perspective, it's like, you don't normally get that in a lot of kind of panels or meetings or conferences. And I think that was the most unique part of it.
Right. And this idea that, we can all learn from each other. I know, Dr. Steiner is hosting many of our awardees as speakers at his Innovation Summit in North Dakota in June, right? So this is not the exception. Like, this is the norm at the Yas Prize, where we take really remarkable individuals, we put them all in a room together, and then without us doing a lot besides just creating that space and bringing them all in, they are collaborating, they are learning from one another in really important ways. And so, I commend you both for making really an important space and really leveraging the network. Last question before I go to some of our audience questions. So just a reminder, we are using the Q&A portion of the Zoom features for our questions. So I saw that Nathan put in a question. As you have questions, like, feel free to add them in there. And in about 5 minutes, I will start answering them. So last question for you both, and I'll start with you, Brian. What skills, and this could be skills in whatever way you define skills, what skills do you think are going to be most important for schools to be thinking about in order to set their graduates up for success, long term?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll skip over financial literacy. That would be an easy one. But I think that particularly now when we're looking at like all the AI is the buzz and ChatGPT, and it's like, I think that we're kind of at this precipice right now where we're going to be able to solve problems a lot easier using AI. But I think that it's still trying to create students that are able to think of the questions that you would be asking. So I think critical thinking is massive, and kind of trying to figure that out, because we don't know the jobs, but we know that critical thinking is probably relevant to them. And I think a lot of what we try to emphasize beyond just the hard skills of like financial literacy and math, it's like trying to teach like confidence, patience, a lot of these like social learnings that you can get out of simulating a portfolio, or you also get in most classes. Like, I remember being wrong in school once, maybe twice. And it's like, you remember those moments and those teachable moments more so. So I think trying to like dealing with adversity and those kind of elements that transcend a particular subject are going to be really critical.
Dr. Steiner, what are your thoughts?
I think there's about 3 skills I think are most important. One is we need people with a learner's mindset. And everybody says that, like, well, I've got a growth mindset, but do you really? Do you approach every day as an opportunity to learn? When you fail, do you as an adult model what that looks like to learn? Do you admit the mistakes and help model what that looks like to reflect? I think we need people to be able to advocate for themselves and what they need. That is the world we're living in right now. Me telling people this is what you have to do when you come to our school doesn't work anymore. But I need them to be able to stand up and say, here's what I need to do my job to the best of my ability. And then the last one is, and this is a little different, and I think this is where the public school side of me comes, is I want people that are visionary. I do not want teachers to come into my school and mold to what we want. I want them to create the mold that we should become. And I tell every first year person that I come in is, I'm not hiring you to look like everyone else. I'm hiring you because you don't look like everyone else. And I think we need to stop thinking visionary or future thinking is something that's only done once you get a certain amount of years or into leadership. We need visionary people, and we need that as a skill that we develop and foster in people.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. I'm going to be answering some questions, and I might punt a question to one of you both if I feel like you're even more poised to answer it than me. So thank you again both so much. And you both are true testaments of what it means to be a Yas Prize awardee and just a visionary in this field. So thank you. Nathan wrote a question. My question is, Dr. Steiner, if you can kind of take this one, how do you track and report for progress and or success at meeting competencies? When he's trying to been getting rid of grades, and one of his major hang up is parents, students, and especially teachers, they all tend to fall back to the artificial and inauthentic simplicity of a percentage grade. You spoke to this a little bit, but can you dive a little bit more into what specifically that report looks like, or what kids going to college, like what are they submitting?
Yeah, so we've got our learning management system is something called Empower. It's what we use because it's a learning management system built around pulling in evidence and then reporting that evidence out. And it can do that on priority standards. but it also can do it on competencies as well. So ultimately, you need a learning management system that truly does that work. Everyone will say they can do that work, but they all can't. And then we give our parents access to be able to look at the evidence. So our learners are uploading multiple pieces of evidence to demonstrate learning. And the last thing I'll say on that is that evidence, a test is no more important than a worksheet or a conversation. Evidence is anything that says they're learning something towards an end goal.
And another one of our awardees last year, who was our semifinalist, was Lift Learning. They're out of Vermont, but they are national, and they are a platform which helps to conceptualize this idea of competency-based grading. So I would encourage anyone to check them out. Lift Learning would be that awardee. Someone also, I know that Josephine answered it, but someone was asking about like applicants and lead applicants versus co-applicants. So the lead applicant is whoever is the primary person filling out the application, and that should be the superintendent, principal, head of school, founder, CEO, that like top person at the organization that has the most knowledge. You can then have a co-applicant, which could be like a co-founder, someone who's supporting you in writing that application, as long as they have the username and password that you create to create your application. They can go on and help you work on it. Brian, I would love to hear from you. I know that you have a co-founder. Like, how did you logistically tackle, like, did you both work on the application together, or did one person take the lead? Just curious about that. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I ended up taking the lead in terms of the writing of the application. But I mean, most of the grants we do, I mean, my partner definitely was proofreading it. I think I would have liked to have him join for the Miami part. I think there was kind of hesitation around just the time commitment. And then, I mean, truly, there's not much downtime in Miami, but the hour before dinner, it was like every single day I was calling, being like, okay, you got to look up this guy, this person, this one. Like, so I think that he's become more involved in the process post the application itself, I think. And he's come to some of the events that we've had them with, kind of semifinalists and whatnot after Miami. But I think that what shocked me most was that it's not just about, okay, only one of us needs to go show face. It was genuinely walking away from it like, okay, I learned something today, every day. So I think it would have been more helpful to have him more involved.
And what Brian's talking about is for our accelerator, we pay for the full travel and all expenses related to you coming to Miami. And then if you want to bring an additional 2 other people, you can do that at your organization or school's expense. Some do, and then some come by themselves. And Dr. Steiner and Brian came by themselves, and they were both finalists. So bringing additional people does not, I mean, it might help, like Brian is saying, in terms of having that thought partner of like, okay, here's our takeaways, here's our next steps, like here's what I'm going to do with this information. But in terms of being a candidate or, be like moving on to the next round, which is the finalist round, like that does not help you or hurt you, but it probably does help like your organization if that's something that's helpful to you, and if that's something you can pull off. Someone was asking a quick question about videos. I want to make a quick disclaimer that you can upload up to 2 videos. They do have to be URLs. So if it's like privately listed on YouTube or Vimeo, you can add that. Just make sure that it's accessible if we click it. So it's not super private, but we do not expect you to create new videos. So I'll say that one more time. We do not want you to spend money or time creating new videos. This would be only videos that you have in existence showing off your school or your business. If you do not have a video, then don't submit it. And truly that will not have an impact on your application. It's just helpful if you do have it. But it will not be held against you if you don't submit any videos. We do look at pictures, and pictures are required. Someone had a question about eligibility criteria. This is one of the last questions I'm going to take. So you need to be currently working with students in the United States. and you need to have been like in existence, meaning that you have data to prove that you're transformational and outstanding. So if you're planning to open up a school in September, that would work. You could apply next year, but you would not be able to apply this year. I think those are most of the questions. I saw Josephina was answering a lot of them typing. So thank you, Josephina, for your help. Dr. Steiner, any last words of wisdom or advice for our potential applicants on the call today?
Yeah, I would say a couple quick things. Think big, think bigger, think even bigger than that. And then you start from there. Do not try to use the Yaz Prize as a way to sustain. Use the Yaz Prize as an opportunity to grow and impact others. Like, it has been a transformational experience for me as a person, and the connections we made, but also our organization. And there, you don't just get away from the excuses. Go after barriers. Like, we went after legislation because of the Yaz Prize, and we've achieved some of that. Like, just don't let anything stand in your way for doing what's right for learners out there.
And Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Dr. Steiner was saying. I think back in 2018, our company started, we drove to 170 high schools and just showed up because the main office was saying they didn't have top-down distribution. And I think that there's very few organizations I've encountered that have that same mentality of like, just show up and do the work. And someone says, well, it's not supposed to be that way. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things that we need to fix then. So I would agree. I mean, I think it's not a really long application compared to some of these. I think that part of writing it was beneficial for us because we were kind of at earlier stages of just understanding, okay, what do we do and how do we do it in kind of a productive and effective way? So, I mean, I couldn't recommend it higher.
Well, thank you both so much. If you join us and apply, you'll be invited to our virtual accelerator, which is the 3 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving. You might hear from Dr. Steiner and Brian again. We invite a lot of our alumni back as speakers. And then if you become an awardee, we have a Yas Prize Movement network page where you'll be able to have access to them and learn from this vibrant community of learners and leaders. So thank you both so much. I want to just share a few next steps. So yasprize.org/apply is the best place to start your application. Our next webinar is coming up on June 2nd, focusing on the outstanding principle, and we'll have two other alumni who are going to be joining us to share. All of our registrants will get this recording and a follow-up email from Josephina with next steps. But we hope that you are inspired by Dr. Steiner and Brian like I was. I learned something new from them every single time I talk to them. And they are just two examples of the norm of what the Yas Prize is. Their stories are exceptional. They're leading schools and organizations that are exceptional. And we really hope that you submit your application so you can join us and continue these conversations. So I hope it is a beautiful day wherever you are coming to us from. Enjoy it, and please reach out, info@yasprize.org if you have any questions. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Dr. Steiner. We'll see everyone soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.